What if children are sent to outer space and are programmed for intelligence and obedience, embark on an expedition to colonize a distant planet? When they uncovered disturbing secrets about the mission, they defy their training. Then suddenly, while fixing the aircraft's engine, an unknown force attacks them. Welcome to What a Story. The sci-fi story starts in the year 2063 AD. Human existence is at risk of extinction because of climate change. In such harsh conditions, they work hard to find a planet where humans can settle upon. The top scientists and astronomers of the world are in a conference meeting. They have finally found an Earth-like exoplanet, far away in the galaxy, and discuss how they can colonize it. The only solution is to breed their own crew members and train them in isolation. That way, the crew members wouldn't know how the Earth was and wouldn't feel nostalgic. The scientists use bioengineering to give birth to 30 babies who will in the future initiate the 86-years-long voyage to the exoplanet. The kids are raised and trained by a scientist named Richard. Richard treats the kids as his own and with time, grows attached to them. After a few years, he insists on joining them on their trip to space. Eventually, when the kids are of a certain age, they fly to outer space with Richard as their guardian. Years later, the children have developed into young adults and are accustomed to living in space with ease. They take educational classes that inform them of their purpose, and rise at the same hour each day. Then they work out and perform a routine mechanical inspection. They share a meal in the cafeteria following that. Throughout it all, the crew does not interact with one another very much, giving the impression that they lack human emotions. They take a blue liquid after each meal, which is a significant part of their day. The next scene shows two crew members, Chris and Zach, enjoying a leisurely classical music listening session. Another member named Selah is having doubts about the mission and thinks of her life as unimportant. She talks to Richard about it. For the duration of their stay aboard the ship, the crew grows its own plant. One day, Chris finds out that the water they use to irrigate the plants has a toxin. Since the water contains filtered urine, the toxin must be coming from the crew members' bodies. When Richard is questioned about the toxin, he merely instructs Chris to replace the filtration system. Later, Chris investigates the toxin. He even informs Zach about the situation. The two break into the database, and discover that the blue liquid they often consume contains a toxin. They also demonstrate that the toxin reduces pleasure response, removes sexual cravings, and renders people passive. That implies that the crew is being drugged to keep them under control. Zach and Chris stopped ingesting the blue liquid. They also share the discovery with Julie and Kai, two additional team members. Additionally, Chris discovered a hidden chamber in the ship that was unregistered. Chris informs Richard that he has found an unnamed chamber in the blueprints and asks him what it is used for. Richard continues by evasively informing him that the chamber is only for the third generation aboard and that such information is confidential. The next day, Chris and Zach experience feelings they have never had before in their life. Zach touches Selah's arm because he is attracted to her sexually. Only after Richard casually instructs him to keep his distance, does he release his hold on her. Later, as the two are walking through the hallways, they notice odd noises coming from the ship's ceiling. They inquire about it with crewmate Edward in the control room. They have been informed by Richard that it is only the sound of the ship's components contracting. Edward, however, thinks that an alien thing is to blame for the sounds. Richard calls a conference to discuss the situation and informs the team that a malfunction has caused them to lose touch with Earth. The transmitter will need to be repaired from the exterior of the spacecraft. Zach is invited to join Richard as he assigns everyone their various tasks. Zach begins inappropriately caressing Sela as they are getting ready. Richard catches him off guard and stops him. Richard follows Zach as he flees from them. Richard is told that Zach has stopped taking the blue liquid. Then Richard runs into Chris, who admits that he hasn't been taking it either. The two decide to finish the repair before speaking about it. They don their spacesuits and leave outside. While the others are working in the control room, Kai from the navigation room assists them. Suddenly, an unknown force suddenly electrocutes Richard. The crew is in a panic as the entire ship begins to malfunction. Chris manages to get Richard inside the ship. They shock him with a defibrillator. Richard dies. Edward claims to have seen something dark that dragged Richard just before he passed away. He believes it to be an alien. Chris reassures everyone that they are safe since it happened outside the ship. Zach offers to take Richard's place as chief officer, but everyone else decides to cast votes instead. After the voting is completed, Chris is ultimately chosen as the new chief executive. Then he gives everyone the command to fix the ship's damage as soon as feasible. Sela goes to Richard's room to dispose of his possessions. Chris joins her, and the two watch Richard's video documentary together.
I want to protect him.
Later, when Chris sees how the crew is doing, he finds no one there. Everyone is working to fix the food store when he arrives at the break room. They had been brought there by Zach, who advised them to prioritize their food and prevent it from spoiling. Kai warns everyone not to drink the blue liquid that day after supper. The crew experiences a range of emotions the next day. For the first time, Zach and Julie make physical contact while being attracted to the other sex. Others engage in conflict, rush around the ship, and neglect their jobs. They eventually get entry to Richard's room where they watch videos from his collection. As the chief medical officer, Sela finds them in the room and gives them the order to leave. Chris sees Kai and Julie having sexual activity. Then he sees Zach searching for Sela. He hugs her to let Zach know she's already occupied.
Stay away from her. I'll do what I want.
Kai notices Peter and Julie getting close. He strikes Peter because of jealousy. Later, everyone is in the cafeteria when Peter strikes Kai with a metal object in retaliation. Chris and the other participants break up the altercation and call an urgent meeting in the control room. In the meeting, Chris expresses his dissatisfaction but Zach interrupts. Zach promises to protect the crew against the aliens and feed them abundantly. He says that he is starting a different group from Chris and invites supporters to join him. Zach takes half of the team with him, and Chris takes the other half. Chris's group goes to retrieve the surveillance footage from the systems room. Kai and Zach enter the system room. They claim that aliens were attacking them. Chris and the group are watching the security tape when they saw a clip showing Zach and Kai purposefully electrocuting Richard. They made the decision to keep it a secret for the time being. The door is knocked on the morning after they wake up. Zach and his crew are coming to extend an invitation to lunch. Chris and the others cautiously make their way to the cafeteria and begin to eat. Zach suddenly enters the room and claims the position of new chief officer. Chris responds by showing everyone the video of Zach and Kai murdering Richard.
Zach killed Richard.
Everyone gets up in surprise, but Zach admits to killing him. He says that he had seen an alien attached to Richard and had to kill him to kill the alien. He then says that the alien might have attached itself to someone else from the crew. The naive crew believes him. With no evidence, they blame Peter for carrying the alien and beat him to death. They then gather all the cutting-edge weapons to confront the alien. Sela advises that they take the weapons out of the hidden area that Chris is aware of. Chris attempts to access a hidden storage space behind a wall. The passcode, however, is incorrect. Zach's team arrives there. They are able to obtain the weaponry. Some members of Chris' team surrender to Zach. Chris, Sela, and Phoebe are now being approached by his crew. They break down the door and take Chris hostage. When Phoebe speaks up, she screams at everyone to calm down.
Do you want to?
Kai shots her.
See what I can do?
Chris and Sela flee. The group quickly moves after them. Chris kills Kai. When Zach eventually spots them, he pulls a gun on them and chases them into the airlock. Chris and Sela don space suits and open the hatch. As a result, Zach is propelled into space when he storms in. Sela pushed Zach into space. Chris survived. Chris and Sela rejoin the group, which has become submissive without their leader. Everything has returned to normal few days later. Sela is chosen as the next head following an election. They have decided not to consume the blue liquid once more. Sela discovers she is expecting Chris's child, and she ultimately gives birth. The ship is about to touch down on the target planet 86 years after it was launched. Thank you for watching, and see you on the next story.